So today's topic is the three winning formulas for your quarterly cycle, because we all know it's that time of year. So organizations need to get a lot of their quarterly cycles nowadays. They need to focus on OKRs, on product strategy and roadmaps, leading chapters. There's a whole lot of stuff that needs to happen every quarter to make organizations as powerful and effective as they possibly can be. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and hopefully give you a couple of tips to take away. Today, we're going to be favored with three amazing speakers from EPiC. The first one is Peter Cripps. Now, some of you may know Pete. Pete's our Chief Chapter Lead. He's one of our Enterprise Business Agility coaches. He's got a background in change and comms and more than 15 years military service as an officer in the British Army, which is why he's got such a beautiful accent and speaks with such authority. Now, Pete's one of our subject matter experts on OKRs, which is very topical for our quarterly planning. And most of the time, you'll find him helping clients focus on the customers to create workplaces that are people-centric and connected and simply better places to work. So love to hear what Pete's got to say. Our second speaker, who's looking a bit pasty in the photograph, is Sam Rickard. Now, Sam's an experienced program coach. He's obsessed with building connection between people and purpose. He spent the better part of a decade in the higher education industry, enabling IT and business teams to embrace business agility and harness the hidden potential within their people and environments. And so he's going to bring some of that wisdom to us as well. And finally, we've got Jared Roberts doing his best impersonation, I think, of Clint Eastwood. Got very cool there. I can't look at that without saying, punk. Anyway, Jared's a senior consultant and coach with 20 years or more experience working with some of Australia's biggest brands in retail, financial services, higher education. Rumor has it he likes long walks in the rain, but I think even more than that, he likes helping organizations realize more value, especially in those traditional environments, and unlocking the power of people. So these three guys have chewed a lot of dirt when it comes to quarterly planning, and I'm sure we'll get some useful tips that we might take into the next quarter, which might even de-stress some of our lives. So with that introduction, I'd like to hand over to Pete. And Pete, talk to us. What's going on in the world of this quarter ending and planning for the next one?
Thank you, Darren. So yeah, it's a busy time of year as we approach the end of quarter, and there's lots of things to do. If you fail to plan, your plan could fail. Old Benji Franklin over there said, and he's on the US currency, so he must be fairly influential, know what he's talking about. But we're going to sort of cover and think about all the things except from big room planning, big room retro, that you need to do at the end of the quarter. So really, there's many more important things to get right at this time of year. So we often get focused on the quarterly review, quarterly retro, big room planning, and those are really important things to do. Sometimes they become a bit of a tick box checking exercise. And people don't get a lot of value out of those things, but there's lots of other things you need to focus on that we think you should focus on at this time of year in terms of coming to an end of quarter. So we're going to go through three things which we think are top tips to pay attention to and really uplift capability in your organization. So the first one of those is around objectives and key results. So one of the pain points I often see around organizations that have set their OKRs is they spend a lot of time sending a lot of time and effort and putting their OKRs, but they then forget about them for the whole of the quarter until it comes to the end of the quarter, and then they go, oh, what were our OKRs and what did we say we were going to measure? And really, that's you're throwing your time away in doing OKRs because you've set and forget, you wasted your time, and you're not getting any value out of that. And also, it's because OKRs are an implementation of your strategy. It means that you're not doing potentially the right work for your strategy. So you're losing out on everything, your time, and potentially doing work that doesn't matter. Another problem is that when I have seen OKRs that are set, is that they're on-off, and the whole purpose of objectives and key results is they're aspirational. and they allow you to stretch. And in allowing you to stretch, you should be scoring them. And two examples there. So, you know, the board approves the brand refresh campaign by February. Well, they either approve it or they don't. They either don't do it by February or they don't. And again, funding approval requests. So the problem about having a key result, which is on or off, is you can either score it, you know, 10 out of 10 or 0 out of 10. What you should be doing is putting a number or a metric in there, so you can go, and that should be a stretch metric as well. So you go, hey, we'll be happy with a 7, but if we get 8 or 9 or 10, that'd be awesome. So just, I mean, get going with however your key results are, but take a look at them and see if they're on-off key results. And if they are, think about how you can make them better and more measurable. Ooh, let's delete that one. Zoom in here. The next one is that OKRs don't become part of your operating rhythm. It's a bit like set and forget, but actually what you should be thinking about is where in our operating rhythm, where in all our meetings do we have on a monthly, weekly basis, where and what's the opportunity do we actually take time to go, this is the point in our meeting or our operating rhythm that we review our key results and our progress against them. So if you don't allow time and actually plan time and bake it into your operating rhythm, then you're going to forget about them. They're going to be set and forget. What you should be doing is creating OKRs that actually people want to talk about the progress of them around the water cooler or on a Friday afternoon around beer and pizza. So they should be front of mind, they should be baked into your operating rhythm, and actually make the time, bake it into your operating rhythm and ensure you're reviewing them. The other mistake I see a lot in some organizations is that OKRs have become just a replacement for KPIs, and they cascade. Now, a lot of the early work around OKRs sort of said, well, actually, you know, you get your company OKR, then it goes to the department, then goes to the group, and then goes to the business unit, and then down to the team, and then also then down to individuals. And by the time you've cascaded all of that, you've actually created all the bureaucracy that OKRs were meant to destroy, meant to flip. So some of the more recent work, Radical Focus from Catherine Woodkey, she states, hey, if you've got your company OKRs, it's okay that your team OKRs or your department OKRs plug directly into those company OKRs. And if you've got a BAU team, maybe they don't need OKRs at all, because it's really hard for BAU teams to set objectives and then key results. Perhaps they just need KPIs. If they're the teams that keep the engine running, they just, you know, it's hard for incremental sort of objectives to be done. So just doing KPIs for those BAU teams as well. So those 4 challenges I see regularly across some of our clients that we work with. I guess the next question is then, what problems are you seeing or experiencing with OKRs?
And let's see what's happening. Ooh, we're getting some results.
Yeah, setting OKR for the quarter gets a really tiring exercise if your objectives change every quarter. Maybe you should be reviewing them, and the key results might change from quarter to quarter. The objectives should be a bit longer lasting, unless it depends on your industry, like if it's a really fast paced industry, but generally the people we work with, the objectives tend to last certainly more than 1 quarter.
Ooh, look at those.
Fluffy, yeah, too many, absolutely. Key results activities, yeah, key results should be the measure of what you want to happen, and then the activities should be derived from how you're going to make that shift. Jared, am I coming to you now?
Sure. If I can't believe I'm going to do this. If I take your Clint Eastwood throwaway line and say, well, like, to be honest, what we see is kind of the good, the bad, and the ugly. to see what to do. Yeah. Um, so what we see is things like, and it's probably to some of those questions, some of those points that were made there. We see, and I've seen teams do this, or areas, tribes, value streams, for example, do it all the time. They take a whole quarter to actually draft their OKRs. Do you know what? They don't need to be perfect, and trust me, they're not going to be perfect. So just get on and do it. Try and time box it, keep it short rather than longer, and then evolve it from there based on what happens in the quarter. I think I see good buy-in is when it's really that 60-40 at least conversation. It really is drafted from the bottom up. And then there's buy-in from the leadership levels of going, great, here's our feedback and inputs on it to build upon it, rather than this is what you need to do. There's the OKRs, and they get fed. And the last one is there's often a really big cultural shift in moving from being 100, that focus on we need to do all 100% of these. As Pete said, like the good companies like Google are only ever trying to do about 70% of these. They've got those stretch targets in there on purpose. And that's really move away from that whole stick mentality and the very KPI traditional way of looking at those type of things. But with that, that's where leadership courage really comes in. And you need that to come to the fore to be willing to be able to do that. And we're not going to try and do 100% and change the narrative within a system. And at the same time, the courage to be able to be transparent about that, because that's hard and that's true leadership.
Thanks, Jared. All right. So those are all the problems. Those are all the challenges. So what are we going to do about it? Here's our 4 takeaway tips around OKRs that you can implement straight away. First one is bake them into your operating rhythm. I've already mentioned this one, but it's really key. If I can't emphasize it enough, if you don't bake it into your operating rhythm, you're going to forget about your OKRs. People aren't going to talk about them. The second one is appoint an OKR custodian, or sheriff, if you like, if we're doing good, bad, and the ugly. So someone who's accountable, whose role is to go, hey, I'm the person that makes sure that it's in the operating rhythm. I'm the person that makes sure OKRs are set and reviewed, and they're good OKRs, and they're stretch ones, and I can coach people on OKRs. So if you have someone that's accountable, they're going to make your OKRs better. Third one is visualize and make it front of mind. So if you don't see it, you're going to forget about it. People aren't going to talk about them. They're going to forget what the objectives are and the key results, and they're going to just focus on the work. And when you focus on the work, that's when it tends to drift and the work doesn't become strategically aligned. So make them visual. If you're in a physical office, have them up on the wall, have a Kanban board, and I'm going to show you one of those later. And the fourth one is find a tool that works for you. Start simple, paper and pen, spreadsheets. There's also many software tools out there, ones specifically for OKRs, and also things you already have using in your organization that you can use for OKRs. So let's give you some examples of these. So here is our here's a slide. Put your mission on, what's your objective, when's it due, what are the key results? So you can use these and visualize these around your organization. We're going to give this as a download for you to take away after this, I think by email. And it's got some top tips for OKRs on that one. Here's your Kanban board. So this is a really good visual way of seeing when you have your operating rhythm, when should we be talking about it and which key results should we be focusing on. Don't worry about the ones you've achieved or ones on track. This, objective 3 for KR2 is behind target. Let's talk about that one. And there's some standalone OKR software. There's heaps out there. There's other stuff, but there's 3 I want to call out. Profit, I think, is a free tool. They're also paid different versions of it. Microsoft Goals. So if you're a Microsoft shop, there's Viva Goals, which you can turn on depending on your license, and Quantive, which was previously GTM Hub. But as I said, those are 3 that I know about that I've used as standalone software. There's other HRIS software that also includes sort of key objectives and key results as well. And that's a really nice coffee machine. So over to Sam.
Thanks so much, Pete. Morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. So we're going to focus on the second winning formula to, rock your quarterly planning cycle, which is all about the power of product vision, strategies, and roadmaps. Through the teams that I've led in the past, coaching, program teams across multiple industries, there are connected patterns that, no matter the complexity or size of the organization, causes significant pain and confusion to many. But before I go and share a couple of these things with you all, I'd love to hear a little bit more from you. So we've got another question similar to the first, just in Slido. So we'll sort of jump in there, and if we bring up the Slido as well. This is more around what problems are you seeing and experiencing with connecting to a vision, a product strategy, the big rocks to all sort of, break down together and realize value together on. So just take a moment just to really think about the big picture in your organization. How clear is it? How committed are people? How fractured it might sort of be. I'm not gonna plant seeds in your mind just yet, but I just wanted to take a moment just to see what this collective group here sort of is seeing on the day-to-day, the coalface. So I'll just give you a minute there. Benefit profiling, yeah, that's interesting. So yeah, a connection to the benefits, the value we want to chase, and how that sort of connects all up to the bigger goal. Often unrelated as well, depending on the teams that might exist in your organization, from business to technical to enabling. Everyone has obviously got a very important role to play, but yeah, how do they all sort of connect up? Traceability, it's nice. Pet projects as well. So yeah, the skunk works, the innovative things that we're trying to experiment with, and how do they also connect in to the bigger picture? Transparency, yeah, nice. Radical change too often, that's interesting. Only focus is on being number one. Yeah, okay, so hyper competitive, wanting to be the best. How we're going to do that, maybe not exactly sure, but we still want to be the best. Yeah, that's good. All right, so I'm conscious of time for this morning, but there are a couple of emerging themes here in this space. Whether it's around the transparency of what it is that we're trying to focus on together, that collective why, which Pete also tried to weave through very nicely, just around the purpose and function of OKRs. So thank you, folks. Thank you for telling us a little bit more about what you're seeing in your space. So I wanted to then dive into the three patterns that we've all seen as a group. And the first is all about connection to a unified vision, which seems pretty obvious. Both Darren and Jared stole my joke this morning about Clint Eastwood and the Wild West. Maybe in the rehearsals that we had for this yesterday, it kind of planted some seeds for them. So thanks, guys, for taking that. But I'm glad that it landed for you, which was good. So I'd love for you to imagine your environment at this point in time, sort of looking and feeling a little bit like the Wild West. Your ideas and demands placed on your team kind of resemble like tumbleweeds, right? Blowing around, based on the hot air of debate. Teams, leaders, and engagers all engage in prioritization showdowns, but more often than not, aiming at completely different targets altogether. What to invest in becomes an elusive question mark, with efforts scattered and true value not really realized or measured at all. Gradually, over time, morale and engagement begin to drop, and yeah, we're going to run with this Wild West theme. And if you can imagine Clint Eastwood's, brow really drooping nice and low, it's kind of what it feels like. Time, quarter over quarter, things just repeat. So in order to bring order to this chaos that we might kind of see around this fracturedness in our environment, we don't need a sheriff and a badge. And if you can have a quick look at Jared's screen right now, you see like a little dash of sadness at this point in time, because he's got the perfect cowboy costume in his closet. He's been waiting to get it out. And sorry, buddy, it's not going to be this time, but we don't need a sheriff with a badge. What we do need is a unified vision to connect every single individual. This vision should resonate with how we want our target market to feel, guiding our people to connect and collaborate, not just one quarter at a time, but over the long term. So think about crystallizing a 3 to 5 year outlook on your product and service, envisioning how it enhances your user experiences and lives. And 3 to 5 years is a long time, right? Like we often say, oh no, we can't sort of forecast, a year out. That's impossible because, everything's constantly changing. But this bigger view on the impact that we want to have on the world, how do we communicate that in a way that is so simple and so understandable? And this is the challenge. So this North Star, clear and visible, steers our discussions and decisions through quarterly planning cycles. It helps us defining OKRs, as Pete, just covered so well just before, and also in qualifying and prioritizing the right work. A well-articulated product vision is a beacon, right, that kind of unites diverse teams and people, fosters alignment, and most importantly, inspiration to really surface those pet projects, right, that like we sort of covered just before. How do we get more of those going? Because we often don't know what the right thing to do is. So forming a product vision requires space, leadership, and expertise. And it's hard, like it requires a significant time investment, but if we take the time to do it and the space to do it, we recognize the importance of it, it becomes invaluable to many over the long term. If you want an example of what a great sort of product vision looks like, I've just popped a link in the chat. For those who have younger kids, Roblox, probably one of the most prolific content management platforms today, 43, 44 million active users every single day. The way that they describe their product vision through video, simple language, data is something that they regularly connect everybody through, both to the broader community, but also to every one of their employees as well. So there are tons of examples and we can surface some more for you as well if it was of interest. But yeah, the power of language in this case is very, very impactful. We'll move over to the second pattern, which revolves around how we include our stakeholders in our development journey. So I'm gonna swap out the Wild West theme for a moment. I'll give that one a little bit of a break and touch more around like a
do you have to, man? I was just getting into it. I was looking for cowboy hat and everything.
Well, hey, we might come back to it. We might come back to it.
Like that as a promise.
I'm gonna swap it out for a little bit of a personal journey. So my wife and I were recently undertaking a home renovation project. Just a quick poll out to those in the group. Who's had the fun and joy of being in a home renovation before, either doing it themselves or had somebody else do it? Yeah, there's a couple of hands in the audience. Fantastic. So we started with a design to act, and in our case, it was water damage in the bathroom, which was just wonderful. What we found the most difficult so far was actually confirming what it was that we wanted to do in the reno. We went to the Sparky and he gives a few ideas and suggestions on great things to maximize the space. We turned to the tiler, to the carpenter, to the architect, then to the cabinet makers, back to the architect, and then to the marriage counselor. Each expert had their own view on what we should do. But the challenge was that there was no joint platform for them to collaborate and align their thinking towards this central problem that we have, and also our budget, which, yeah, was definitely a challenge. So this might sound familiar in your environment because stakeholders come in, like think about quarterly planning or just the quarterly cycles that we might have. Stakeholders come in, they contribute their 2 cents, they contribute their pain points and their problems. And it's often done in isolation, right? Or it's done sequentially. And then they wait and they see which of their priorities are going to be worked on in the next quarter and which ones aren't. And some are pleased, but more are left with mixed satisfaction. So how do we foster stakeholder engagement and treat them as integral parts of our team, right? Focused on, the same problems and communicating openly. At a recent client engagement that I had, we introduced the notion of a strategic road mapping framework, which was run on cadence. The goal was to bring stakeholders from all parts of the organization into one room. We'd lock them in a room for 2.5 days and throw away the key. And we dove into the data that impacts them all. We shared challenges, insights, and opportunities. So everyone, including senior leaders, because that's a must in this case, shared stories, and together we connected around investment themes for a collection of, like a program, right? So a collection of teams, what they're going to focus on, and ultimately prioritize work over a 12 to 18-month period that started to connect all the dots. It started to blend the problems from different areas into a central space. So yes, plans change, but the power of this approach lies in its ability to bring your plumbers, your carpenters and architects, and even marriage counselors into the circle, right? And act as a second team, aligned and connected. The more you can bring your stakeholders closer to not just you or your teams, but closer to each other so they can share and understand one another, the more you can reduce friction and increase conviction in every decision you make, one quarter at a time. Let's move on to the last pattern, which is struggle to adapt to new information after setting a plan. Now, remembering the Agile Manifesto, we know that responding to change is more important than sticking to the plan. Now, I don't have a fancy analogy for this one. I'll spare you all with that. But this is all about effective feedback loops, focusing on both quality and speed. Quality feedback, right, means getting accurate, reliable data that truly reflects what's happening on the ground. It's not just about customer NPS or conversion rates, those big meaty KPIs, or how we measure on being number one, being the best. It's about combining these metrics and being granular with real feedback from customers, business stakeholders, and our teams, fusing these together. Then there's speed. The faster our cycles of design, build, and release, the quicker we can understand the impact of our work. So we often don't know the right work to do, which work is going to move the right needles. Just coming back to Pete's points around really impactful key results. How do we close the feedback loop on understanding what work moves the needles and what work does not? Are we closely watching, right, how business metrics and human sentiments shift with each increment or project we deliver? If not, we don't have the time to. Here's a simple fix. So first, we identify key metrics. So it's taking the time, right? First of all of these things are about stepping out and taking the time and getting away from the chaos of the environment. First, we identify key metrics for your product or service and set up regular checks to monitor them, right? Forcing new habits. So it's paying more attention to the data, and not just leaders, but everybody. Make sure there is at least one way for your stakeholders and teams, internal people who are building the thing and running the thing, to give feedback, and making sure that that process, right, is as flat as possible. So not, 3 or 4 chains up to then, get to the decision makers, but we've got to make it flat. Second, let's start to introduce set times every quarter to review metrics and feedback as a team of teams, organization, even with your stakeholders. So it's linking everybody to the work that we've done or the work that we could do, and build, the muscle to learn from what we see. Not just do this bit of work, then do the next bit, and then do the next bit after that. Which sounds commonsensical, I suppose, right? But the chaos of our environments often challenge that a lot. And where possible, we want to celebrate experimentation, right? So those pet projects, those things that are different, even when it leads to failure, because it only promotes more curiosity and innovation. So this approach with feedback loops, blending people's feedback with hard data that you can obviously connect through OKRs as well, creates a self-sustainable culture that authentically can drive continuous improvement. So in summary, to get the most out of your quarterly planning cycle with this winning formula, ensure you've got a clear vision for everyone to align to. Be the conduit, right? Not just between stakeholders and your teams, but between stakeholders themselves. And surface holistic data that encourages everyone to challenge the plans that you come up with during quarterly planning, and not just conform to them. So Jared, I'd love to hear from you if that was okay, and please, try to avoid showing everybody your lovely cowboy costume, and maybe we can have a look at that a bit later on. But just around your client experiences around these challenges.
Yeah, I think for me, what I've seen is often two sides of the same coin, really, at the end of the day. One is either not inviting key stakeholders into the tent for the conversation and trying to do it in isolation, which, on paper is probably easier, or inviting them in, but then telling them, hey, this is what the roadmap is. So it's not engaging them for their inputs. And even if that means, God forbid, that it could change your influence your roadmaps, like that's kind of the whole point. And the thing here is a completely missed opportunity. Like as Sam was saying, it is one of the most powerful ways to break down silos across competing groups and politics and all that. You can just, there's a lot of cut through that you can get there, and goodwill. You can create alignment, which is amazing in those type of situations. And it enables you to get really focused on enabling delivery to those roadmaps. So there's a really great opportunity there with noise removal or reduction, which in a lot of systems that I've seen can be key at all levels to allow you to get on with it, rather than I've got all this other stuff going on. So getting really hyper focused on the actual execution part of it. Pete, I'm going to throw back to you, mate.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to our third winning formula. So this is actually about the people. So at EPiC, we are in a tribal model and we have chapters, but this is all about your capability build. So think about your people. So the third thing that we see is not enough attention to, okay, well, we're focusing on the work, we're focusing on our product and our measures around OKRs, hopefully. But we are not taking the time out to go, well, if our products are changing and the landscape and the environment's changing, how do we build the capability in the future to ensure that we can continue to deliver the right thing at the right time, at the right quality? So chapters, or at least the capability within our people, are the unlock to innovation. And so alongside your product roadmap, you need to think about what's your capability roadmap? What things do you need to build out in the future capability in order to deliver your product? So when you do your product roadmap, you need to go, okay, well now let's think about the capability we need to support that to deliver. And so you need to think about your daily work, but also your chapter work or your capability uplift. So what's the balance that we need to invest in our people to ensure that we've got the right capability? And that could be anything from training, uplift, to new hires and bringing that capability in. So unlocking that innovation is around looking at the capability, looking at the capacity, and bringing those people into the quarterly cycle. Second challenge is similar to the OKRs. I keep banging on about this. You need to bake it into your operating rhythm. So what's the time you're going to set aside to building your capability, to that chapter time, to that human connection, but also uplift to discuss, hey, we've got this on our product roadmaps. Are we set and ready to deliver this? What is everyone else? What's happening in the market? How do we uplift our capability? And again, if you don't bake it into your rhythm, the daily work will take over, and you're going to find yourself at a very short runway to uplift capability within your organization. And the third one is around, okay, if we've got our roadmaps, we've got it baked in our operating rhythm, we need to ensure that our capability backlogs are also up to date, but also transparent. Why do they need to be transparent? Well, you're going to have product owners, you're going to have the rest of the organization to go, well, hang on, I need to do this work. And then they need visibility of if your chapter time or your capability uplift time for people, for training, for courses, for uplift, for all that stuff, it needs to be transparent so that the runway of product delivery and also capability uplift can be merged together. So we understand what people are going to be working on, and that can be dovetailed in with your strategic work. And if they're not transparent, you can't see it and you can't make decisions about it. And so those are the three challenges that we see around capability. So what do you do about uplifting capability? First of all, ensure that you've got a way to review your current skill set and what you need. And so do a capability skills review. within your chapters or within your teams to then say, hey, these are the shortfalls. This is where we need to uplift. We're going to add it to our backlog, which is going to be transparent. We're going to put this in our operating rhythm. So you need to know what the gaps are so you can fill them. Second thing is, once you understand your gaps, you can visualize this. So the capability matrix and backlogs, and make sure they're transparent. You can use tools like this. So this here is a radar from Agility Health. We've actually built a custom radar for EPiC. And this is the radar that says, well, actually, each of these segments relate to capabilities we expect of an EPiCer or a coach. And we can rate individuals, or they can self-rate themselves to see where those capability gaps are. So it's a really useful tool to build out and say, well, where do we want to focus? You can't focus everywhere at once. So where are we going to focus quarter by quarter? And off the back of that, you can then build out those individual growth plans and get feedback. One of the tools we use for that feedback is this coaching canvas. So again, we've got this, our focus areas here. So serving, coaching, facilitating, et cetera, straight off that Agility Health radar, that wonder wheel, as we call it. And then we use an experimental approach to say, okay, what's the experiment we're going to do with you this quarter in terms of uplifting your capability? What activities are you going to do? And then at the end of it, look at the outcomes and also plan for the next steps. So it's a really simple one-pager canvas, keeps it lightweight. We shouldn't be doing capability uplift or appraisals, reviews annually. We should be doing it on a quarter-by-quarter basis and conversations in between that as well.
I'll jump in really quickly. I think for me, for all of these, my takeaway from client experience is perhaps pretty simple, but your maturity usually dictates where you are in this cycle and how much of these activities that you might be doing. You might be doing just a few, you might be doing lots of them, might be hyper integrated. For me, though, sometimes they become box ticking exercises, and the value of them, the reason you're doing them, kind of gets lost, and that's understandable. So for me, it's kind of taking it back to basics and going, actually, I'd prefer to see less and then done really well. Like, actually, why are we doing these? Here's the value. Let's take the time to do that and get it out of there, as Pete was saying, for example, around OKRs, rather than just, it is what it is. How do you make them hyper meaningful and used every day and baked into? It is actually a technique that we're using and is helping guide us, rather than something that goes over there in a spreadsheet and you go, yep, done that one. And probably really quickly from a chapter perspective, I've seen that really recently in a client, to what Pete was just saying, is where it often is just, it's on the transformation roadmap. We want to launch some chapters. Great, we've launched them. Tick. But are they really unlocking the real power of your people, of what you're trying to do? Like, are you setting aside the time within those chapters for the people away from some of the doing work to actually build that capability and truly build it? Because yeah, you can have a little dip maybe in delivery capability or speed, but you're getting this massive uplift in terms of, and a whole lot of advantages in your people and what you then can do. So it might be a bit obvious, but often a system gets really busy in doing, in that type of mentality, rather than taking a step back and just going, actually, let's get the most out of these, rather than just trying to do them all and be able to tick a box. All right. I'll throw back to you now, Pete.
Thanks, Jared. So we've got some time left, about 5-6 minutes for your questions. So there was the Slido poll on there.
First one's been upvoted, Pete. Any tips on how to shift away from activity-based OKRs, which never happen, of course?
Yeah, if you've got your OKR custodian, then, or someone that can coach the people who are setting the key results on those activities, it's a coaching exercise. So then, your first lot of OKRs might start off that way, but then it's time to shift them. It's time to review and coach the organization on those activities. So we should be going objective. Then how, if looking back over the 3 months, what things might we, if we focused on measuring, would we impact that objective? And then off those key results, you can go, hey, well, what things are we going to do? What activities are we going to do to shift the dial? If you can coach that simple sentence, which takes 15 seconds there, then people can go, oh, I get how I shouldn't be setting activity key result. But that way you can go, OKRs are easy to understand, they're hard to actually do. And so that takes you away from the trap of activity-based key results.
Yeah, I see this really quickly. I see this, often, and it's really around the key result is deliver project X. You go, great. And as Pete says, when you start with, that might be a really good way to start, just to get it going, as I sort of said earlier. But over time, you want to really definitely mature that. So I think moving away from that and probably asking the question of going, great, why are you doing that project? What value does it actually give and to whom? And you start to focus around the outcome and the value of the project rather than the actual project itself. And that leads into obviously your objectives and then key results.
Nice. Thanks, guys.
Next one. My thoughts, my personal thoughts, are not the best if your OKRs being linked to incentive bonus. OKRs should be a team sport. In my view, they shouldn't really even come down to individual OKRs. I think your capability canvas and how you are coaching people to build their capability, how they've worked in an organization, those should be the results, and the results of those experiments should be how you incentivize and give bonuses. So, or a share of a team outcome towards the outcome they're driving. So I know that's difficult and challenging in some organizations that have individual sort of incentives hard baked in, and they're trying to shift from the KPIs through to just using OKRs, but it's not really how they're designed. So conversations, feedback, and reward should be the way you incentivize in a modern organization, would be my view.
With that?
I don't know who else that.
No. Sorry, Pete. I'll let you read out the next question too. We've got time for about two more. So, key tips to help move OKRs from being reworked KPIs.
Key tips are try and think of your key results as the GPS. So what's the thing that's going to keep you on track? The absolutely key things that will move you towards your objectives, not your BAU. Is the engine running hot? Is the water full of coolant? And so those sort of things. Is it engine running stuff to keep your organization ticking over, or is it actually driving towards a strategy? That's it.
And the last question is, what impact can OKRs have on the QTR planning cycle, such as big room planning?
Oh, they are essential. So if we're talking strategy, the implementation of your strategy is your objectives and key results. If you work out your objectives and key results, everything, all your strategic work should be driving off that. So all your plans, all the work, all the prioritization of all the work should be driven from your OKRs. They are essential. They're the golden thread that takes you from strategy through execution through to delivery. So that's the impact of OKRs. They're essential. I love them.
So thank you. Thanks for coming today. Thank you, Pete. Thank you, Jared. Thank you, Sam. Love listening to you. Love your stories. I was making a couple of notes as you spoke, actually, and I was thinking this little 3 tips that I took away from this. It's all about the connection between people up and down, left and right. But the connection is where it's at. Second thing I took away was not over baking the process. Get it going. Have a crack at it. Don't over engineer stuff. And the third thing, which I think is really important, particularly an EPiC thing, is people. It's all about the people, getting the capabilities right, getting people enthused on the journey together, collaborating effectively, and giving them the capabilities to succeed. So there's my little 3 things I've written on my post-it notes. So thanks for that, guys. And with that, I wish you a fantastic afternoon, and thank you again for drinking the Kool-Aid with us.